One of the most common questions that I personally get is, yo, I'm a beginner. What longboard should I get? How do I pick the right one? So in this video, I'm gonna go over some important things to consider when picking a beginner longboard. Now, a quick disclaimer, if you're not a beginner, then I wouldn't watch this video because it's just gonna be all common sense to you, and I don't wanna waste your time. So there you go. But if you are a beginner and really have no idea what to look for, this is the video for you. I realized after researching a bunch that on Google, there are these websites that just have a bunch of fluff and just kind of leave you confused by the end of it. And it's like, bro, you're not even thinking about the person you're not even trying to help Don't get me started. There are a bunch of websites out there with valuable information, but a lot of it went super in depth, which is probably just gonna leave a beginner mad confused. So I thought to myself, like, if I was getting into longboarding again for the very first time, I had no idea what I was doing, what information would help me make the best decision? And so that's what this video is all about. I spent probably way too much time organizing all this information, which is why this video is a little late up on the channel. The main goal out of everything was just to make it as simple and clear as possible. And by the end of this video, if you still want to dig into the nitty and gritty of longboard terminology, I'm going to link some helpful resources in the description below. Now, the first thing and probably most important is to ask yourself, what's your riding preference? As far as longboards go, roughly there are about 4 categories. Now, people break these up into different ways, but this should give you a rough idea. It's downhill, free ride, freestyle, and cruising. These categories aren't set in stone, but it should give you a rough idea of the different types. Downhill is pretty self-explanatory. These boards are used to go as fast as possible down huge hills, usually whoa, don't know what happened there. Usually in a racing scenario. If you've ever seen those dudes with like really intense helmets and full suits, then yep, those are downhill dudes. If you're a beginner, you're not gonna wanna be doing downhill because it requires some pretty intense skills. Then there's free ride, which is essentially just going really fast and throwing long slides. These boards will typically have more flex and have harder wheels, making it easier to slide. Downhill and free ride pretty much go hand in hand because they're both all about high speeds. But chances are, if you're a beginner, you're not gonna wanna start out by doing downhill or free ride. That's just crazy in my opinion. Moving on, we have freestyle, which is pretty much the most versatile category. Carving, dancing, doing tricks, all fall under this category. It's pretty open for interpretation and is one of the most expressive forms of longboarding. If you've ever seen someone do flip tricks, shove-its, walk up and down their board, then that all falls under the freestyle category. These boards will usually have a kicktail so you can do tricks and will often have a platypus shape with a drop-through truck mount. But there are so many other board variations out there. I don't want to limit it and tell you that it's just a platypus shape. You can get a freestyle board if you're a beginner because it will offer enough deck space to balance on. And if you know in the future that you're going to want to do tricks or you're going to want to dance, then it honestly does make sense. But if you know for a fact that you're never going to be interested in doing tricks or dancing, then the final category is for you, cruising. You should get a cruiser board if you're looking to just do some mellow cruising. Go from point A to point B. These boards will often come in like a pintail shape with wide and soft wheels, but like the freestyle category, it's really not limited to a specific board shape. There are even mini cruisers which have that old school retro style, just like the Landyachtz dinghy, which you could see right here. I don't know if I can, it's kind of hard to point. Right here. All right, you got that? Yeah. My first ever longboard was when I was 5 and it was a Sector 9 pintail, which was the perfect beginner board. All right, so that's a broad overview of longboard categories. That's how I like to categorize them. So hopefully that was simple and clear to understand somewhat. Take some time to really think about your riding preferences and then congratulations, you completed step 1. I'll give you a quick example. Say you want something to cruise on, but you also want something that's portable. Well, in that case, then you're gonna wanna go with a mini cruiser that's in the 25 to 30 inch range. Step 2 is to determine your budget because honestly, that's another really vital part of the selection process. One thing that not a lot of people think about is factoring shipping fees when picking your longboard because shipping the size and weight of a longboard isn't cheap. A quick tip is to find a longboard brand that's located near you so you don't have to spend an arm and leg on shipping. There are even quite a few companies that I know of in the US or just outside that work shipping into their pricing. So shipping ends up being free, which is just really nice. I broke budget into 3 different categories: low tier, mid tier, and high tier. Low tier, I like to categorize as under $100, which typically, if you have that budget, then to get a new longboard, you're basically turning to Amazon, which is all right. I've bought quite a few boards off of Amazon recently just to inspect the quality. And in most cases, they cheap out in the bearings and wheels, which is not good if you're going to be riding a lot. Some popular brands on Amazon are Volador, Retrospect, and Magneto. I probably butchered those names, but that should give you a solid idea of brands on there. The only time I would recommend buying these brands is if you're not sure if you even like longboarding, you're kind of just testing the waters. Best thing you can do to get more of a quality board in this budget range is to go on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or go to a local garage sale. Just ask around if anyone has a longboard laying around, because chances are there's probably something out there. You should be able to score a decent board and just swap out the bearings or trucks in an extreme case. All right, then there's mid-tier, which ranges from $100 to $200. Right in the middle is typically where you can get an overall solid board. Some reputable brands in this category are Landyachtz, although a lot of their boards go above $200. Sector 9 is another company that's been around forever, and like I mentioned earlier, was my first board. Penny Skateboards, which I know gets a lot of hate, but their longboard is actually pretty decent for beginners. And then there's Globe and Arbor. There are a bunch of other solid brands within this price range. If you know of any and you can recommend them, drop a comment below. I'd be curious to hear. And finally, if you're willing to spend $200 or more, congratulations, you have a high tier budget and you've got mad options. At this level, I'd recommend either going with Landyachtz or Loaded, 2 really solid companies that have been around forever. Just to put it in perspective, I've had my Loaded Tantien for probably over 8 years now, and I've never had any complaints about it. Like, bro, it's amazing. If you can afford to spend this much, then it's almost better because it's gonna last longer. But at the same time, if you're just getting started, then you don't have to spend this much, especially if you're not sure you're gonna be longboarding long term. All right, and the last section is to consider your environment. What I mean by this is, are you gonna be riding in a city that has a lot of cracks? Are you gonna be going over cobblestone? Do you need to be doing sharp turns? The reason why environment is so important is because it's gonna help you determine the characteristics that your board will need. For example, if you need something to cruise to work in a city environment, then it's probably safe to say you're gonna be doing tight turns, going over cracks and pebbles, and hop up on curbs if necessary. So in this case, you're probably gonna wanna go with a small cruiser, mini cruiser, that has a kicktail and soft wheels. But if you live in a more rural area and just wanna cruise, then you'll probably just want a longer board. I could probably talk about different scenarios for hours, but that should give you a solid idea. To summarize, if you take into consideration your riding preference, your budget, and environment, you're gonna be in a pretty solid position to pick the right board for you. Downhill and free ride, I would avoid, especially if you're watching this, you're probably a beginner. Freestyle boards are a viable option for beginners, but only if you think that you're gonna be getting into tricks or doing some dancing down the line. But overall, the most common type of board for beginners are cruisers. I wouldn't suggest buying all the parts individually as a beginner. You'll just want a complete that you can take out of the box and go ride. All right, so now you're probably wondering, this is all great info, but where should I buy my board? Well, it depends, but honestly, I think the best place is to buy
on Amazon so that I get a
I'm playing, bro. First, if you have a local skate or surf shop, then I'd suggest starting there. That's the best way to avoid steep shipping costs. Plus, you're pumping money into your local economy, which is always dope. Another option that I briefly mentioned earlier is to go to a garage sale in your area. Chances are you'll eventually come across a longboard and you can get it for a steal. All right, and now your next option, moving online, is to buy it directly from the company's website. I've done this method for most of my boards because I don't have any local shops around me, which kind of sucks. But also the benefit of buying this way is you're dealing directly with the source. So if there are any issues, you'll be fine. Another option is to buy from an online wholesale shop. I personally have experience buying from Mirror Skate, which I really can't say enough good things about. I actually ordered my Tantien from them about 8 years ago, and I ordered the wrong wheels. Instead of having me send back the wheels, it was my mistake, by the way, they sent me a free pair. A free pair, no questions asked. I'm not affiliated with Miraskate in any way. I just had a super positive experience with them. And the final online option that I could think about was going on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. I had a quick look at Facebook Marketplace, and you can put your budget right in and a bunch of options pop up. I would say that's a great place to look. I know I didn't cover different characteristics like durameter, concave, flex, wheelbase, all that fun stuff. Like I said, if you want to learn more, I'm going to link helpful resources in the description below. If I made any mistakes, which I most likely did, you know, I'm human, then let me know in the comments below because I'm always trying to improve. As always, drop a comment if you're confused, you need help with anything at all. I'll get back to you. I'll see you in another video later.